Hi, everyone. I'm Fox 2's Root Barrage. So good to be with you today. You know, West Bloomfield has a really special place in our heart. When my wife and I first moved here back to Detroit, where I'm originally from, we lived in New Orleans and we moved to Detroit and we were looking for a place to live. Julie, my wife, who's from another city, picked West Bloomfield, and we made that our home for many years before moving closer to another area closer to our family. But West Bloomfield, man, I got to tell you, it has some special places in our hearts because of what it meant for us and what it was for us. Just a wonderful community. And getting to know the business owners and the business leaders in West Bloomfield was probably one of the greatest pleasures as a journalist. So many wonderful businesses from retail to all kinds of different shops and that community in West Bloomfield has always been something to celebrate. And that's what we're celebrating here today. And so we thank you so much for being with us and being a part of this big event. Yes, like everything, to be in the same room, at least for now. Hopefully that'll change in the coming years. But in the meantime, I want to welcome everyone to the Greater West Bloomfield Vibe. This is an exciting day. This community-wide event is going to touch on health, leadership, cybersecurity, and lots of fun stuff like a cooking demo, happy hour, pet contest, and hottest toys as well. Holidays are around the corner. Pet contest is going to be really fun, one of my favorites as well. Coming up in the next 2 days, there are some really great experts from the Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital, Comcast, Yammer, Microsoft Teams, Beaumont, Consumers Energy, and so many more. And they're all equally special, but there are so many that I can't list them just on this call right now. You need to hop in to see for yourself. Who better to set the vibe, though, than someone who really doesn't need an introduction, but because we love him so much, we want to remind you of how special Mr. Mitch Albom is to our community. Mitch is an internationally renowned and best-selling author, a journalist, a screenwriter, a playwright. What doesn't he do? He's a broadcaster for radio and television, and his books have collectively sold more than 40 million copies across the globe. I have several on my bookshelf right behind us here on my office. It has been published in 49 territories and 47 languages around the world, and have been made into Emmy Award-winning and critically acclaimed television movies. So, my friends, get ready, get set, and vibe.
Hi, I'm Mitch Albom, and I'm here to talk for a few minutes about giving and the idea of giving. Some of you may know that I'm pretty involved with charitable works. I operate Say Detroit, which is a very large now 9 project-oriented charity conglomerate of 9 different organizations that do work in the city of Detroit, from children 5 days old all the way up to senior citizens and kind of everybody in between. I also operate an orphanage in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, under our Have Faith Haiti mission orphanage, and I'm there every month with the 52 children that we're raising there. And that might paint a portrait of somebody who is very philanthropic, but if I have achieved that at this point in my life, I need to confess that I was not always that way. And in fact, for a number of years of my life, I really didn't spend a whole lot of time thinking about other people other than myself. I was pretty ambitious and pretty just career sort of oriented and climbing my own ladder. I tried not to be a jerk to people, but I didn't really look over at too many other people's ladders either. And what I wanted to share with you is that, you know, you don't have to be born into giving or charity work in order to be inspired by it. And for me, that first inspiration really came when I was already in my mid-30s. And I was visiting with an old college professor of mine named Maury Schwartz. Some of you may recognize that name from the book Tuesdays with Maury. He was dying from Lou Gehrig's disease. And I was visiting him every Tuesday, what turned out to be all the Tuesdays he had left in his life. And he was sort of teaching me a last class on what's really important in life once you really recognize that you're going to die. Not the, I know one day I'll die, but you really know that it's imminent. And it was really interesting to hear his philosophies on life, but in particular, when it came to people who would visit him Now, besides me, and I would notice that there would be a pattern to them. A lot of them, I'd seen him on TV. He'd done some interviews with Ted Koppel on Nightline. They were just kind of coming to pay their respects. They really weren't coming back maybe more than once, but they were a little nervous about talking to someone who was dying, and they would prepare all these stories and jokes and photographs and things like that. And then they would show up, and he would be in his office in his chair because he couldn't move, he had ALS. And they would go in, the door would close, and they would stay in there for an hour, and then they'd come out, and they'd come out in tears. But they were crying about their love life or their divorce or their job or their whatever. And they said, I don't know what happened. I went in to try to cheer him up. I had all these stories and everything, but after a couple of minutes, he started asking me questions about my life and my problems. I started telling him, and then he started asking me more, and I really started telling him, and thus I really opened up, and I started crying. And I went in to cheer him up, but I ended up being cheered up by him. And I saw this happen so many times that I went into him once and I said, all right, I don't get it. You're the one who's dying. You're the one who has Lou Gehrig's disease. You're the one who could say, let's not talk about your problems. Let's talk about my problems. Why don't you do that? You've hit the mother lode of sympathy here. Why are you constantly asking people how they're doing or helping them with their problems? And he looked at me as if I were being very naive, and he said, Mitch, why would I ever take from people like that? Taking just makes me feel like I'm dying. Giving makes me feel like I'm living. Giving makes me feel like I'm living. It's a profound little sentence. It also rhymes, so it's easy to remember. Giving makes you feel like you're living. And I never forgot that. And I realized, boy, if a man is dying, and even in his limited days, what makes him feel most alive is giving of himself to somebody else, then that has to be the formula to feel most alive, even in our healthier days. And so I began to be oriented that way. And, Maury helped in that he guilted me a little bit. One time he asked me he said, what do you do for your community? I said, what do you mean? He said, what do you do for your community, charities, people who are doing good work? And I said, well, I write checks. And he said, well, anybody can write a check, but you've been given a voice, and you need to use that voice for more than just aggrandizing yourself. And I think that's when I really began to spend a lot of my time in my column for the newspaper, writing about, people who needed help and issues like that. And I started my own first charity there back in 1995, and it's called the Dream Fund. It was a little small scholarship fund to help kids study the arts who wouldn't otherwise get a chance, because I had kind of been one of those kids when I was younger, and I know I would have appreciated somebody coming along and helping me. And so I started with that, and one thing led to another, and I did a little bit more. And then in 2006, when we had the Super Bowl here in the city of Detroit, you might recall it was very, very cold that week. And I read about a party for the homeless, a Super Bowl party for the homeless. And I said, what is that? A Super Bowl party for the homeless? Well, it turned out when I looked into it that it was a euphemism for gathering up all the homeless people in Detroit and moving them into homeless shelters so that they wouldn't bother the customers who were here in Detroit. And then Monday morning, put them back out in the street once everybody went home. And I thought that was very cruel, to give somebody shelter for your purposes and then to take it away from them when it doesn't serve you anymore. And so I went down to a homeless shelter in Detroit to write a column about what it was like to spend the night there, and to try to explain to people this isn't something you just give and take away from people. And while I was standing online at the shelter, I wasn't pretending to be anybody I wasn't. I got my bar of soap and my blanket and the whole 9 yards, and I was standing there waiting for the meal, and this guy in front of me turns around, he looks me up and down, he says, "Aren't you Mitch Albom?" And I said, "Yeah." And he looked me up and down again. He said, "So what happened to you?" And after I left, then I realized, wow, that's some sentence, what happened to me, because I'm sure from where he was coming from, that made perfectly good sense. I'm sure he never figured that he would be on a homeless shelter line, and why not me? I'm there, but for the grace of God, go all of us. One thing here, there, one scandal, one financial accident, and suddenly you need that kind of help. So I never really forgot that. And I wrote a column about that experience. And it must have been pretty passionate, because I was trying to raise $60,000 to keep all the homeless people who we were giving the party to in the shelters until it got warm again. And I needed about $60,000 to do that. And within about a week's time, I had raised $325,000, all from people just sending in $25 and $10 and $5, and they were moved as I was. And so I had this money, more than we needed, and I tried to figure out what to do with it, and that was the formation of Say Detroit, SAY Detroit, Super All Year Detroit, instead of Super One Weekend Detroit. And that started this charity that has now grown into a multi-million-dollar organization with, as I said, 9 operations in the city. We have a daycare program for children whose parents are in rehab or transitional housing, and they often can't get a job because they're holding a baby when they go in for a job interview. So we take care of the kids from age 5 days old up to 2.5 years, and also teach parenting skills to the very often young mothers who are involved. We have a medical clinic, the nation's first medical clinic for homeless children in the United States, in Highland Park, that now has broadened out to women and men as well, and serves the entire community without any questions asked. You don't need insurance, so we take all cases. And of course, we ended up running a big COVID-19 program out of there. We still do. And we became the first place in the city of Detroit where you could walk up and get a COVID-19 test. You didn't have to have a car. We operate something called the Say Play Center at Lipke Park, which is a 15-acre facility that we took over from the city and refurbished and rebuilt. And right now, not only does it have a football field that Matthew Stafford built, state-of-the-art NFL field, a baseball diamond that the Tigers built, and basketball courts indoor that the Pistons did, but it also has a 7,000 square foot digital learning center. And all the kids who come from all the neighborhoods around Detroit have to spend at least an hour and a half in the digital learning center, going over, working on their reading or their homework or whatever, and improving their grades to at least a 3.0 before they can pick up a basketball or a football and start enjoying this massive recreation centers that we have here. We have all the sports. We also have a recording studio there. We have a dance studio there. We have a robotics program there. We're very proud of that. We've got senior programs and veterans programs and scholarship programs for the College for Creative Studies and many, many more things. But all of it grew from a notion of just, I need to do something to help, or I need to give a little bit of my time, or give of my words, or give of my attention. So the last of which items is that, and I mentioned this a little before, in 2010, I went down to Haiti after the earthquake, got involved with an orphanage there, and ended up taking it over, and I've been running it ever since. I'm in Haiti every month. We have 52 children that we raise there, and we built the first toilets, we built the first kitchens, built the first showers, we built the first school, and now we built it up to a nice place where the kids go to school 4 hours in English and 3 hours in French every day. And they're beautiful, joyous children who are hoping to get college educated. The 3 oldest ones are already here in America getting college degrees, and I have scholarships lined up for all 52 of them, should they make the grade, which they will. And all of that just comes from that same stem of, giving is living. And I just find that, a lot of people know me for the work that I do, maybe in the newspaper, books, movies, TV, or whatever. But I have to tell you, the most satisfying things I do are when I'm at that orphanage in Haiti, or when I'm working with the kids here. When I sleep down in Haiti in a cheap old mattress in 90-degree heat at night, and it's sticky and it's hot and you're sweating. But I always say I always sleep better there than I sleep anywhere else, including any hotel I've ever stayed at or any fancy place, because I wake up with a sense of purpose. And I have found Maury's words to be true. You feel more alive when you give. So if I could share that message with anybody out there, it's in every one of us, every one of us. You just have to kind of tap into it, or have somebody tap you into it, as I did. And I found it to be really valuable. So giving is living, and you'll feel better when you live that way. At least that's been my experience. Thanks.